pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think Veronica's working.
Okay.
I must have decided if Jan was.
Veronica online at all? I think she's working.
So
I just checked.
is there anybody for public comment?
But see, Jan is his name. We're good.
Having none, is there any further budget discussion?
I did have a part two budget message, but that works.
Absolutely.
All right, so before we begin discussion tonight, I want to take a moment to speak about this process and my hopes for moving forward. Budget work is difficult work, particularly in a time when school districts across Oregon are facing significant financial pressure and uncertainty. Healthy disagreement and hard questions are not only acceptable in this process, they are necessary. In fact, one of the things we've worked intentionally on as a district over the past few years is moving away from unhealthy peace, where concerns go unspoken, frustrations build quietly, or people avoid difficult conversations altogether. A budget committee functions best when questions are rooted in curiosity, preparation, transparency, and a shared commitment to student success. It becomes less productive when assumptions are made before information is sought, when operational speculation overtakes governance responsibilities, or when conversations shift towards suspicion rather than understanding. There is a difference between thoughtful oversight and perpetual skepticism. Strong governance requires hard questions, but it also requires a willingness to engage information in good faith, remain focused on student outcomes, and avoid allowing personal theories, individual agendas, or operational rabbit trails to overshadow the purpose of this work. Our district values community, integrity, and hope. Our district values of community, integrity, and hope were never intended to be words framed on a wall or repeated only in moments of celebration. Their true meaning is revealed in moments like these, when conversations are difficult, emotions are high, resources are limited, and people see the path forward differently. Community means choosing respect over division and assuming positive intent even when we disagree. Integrity means having the courage to ask hard questions while also having the humility to genuinely consider the answers. Hope means refusing to let fear, frustration, or uncertainty define us, and instead remaining committed to building the strongest possible future for our students, staff, and this community. At the center of this work are children who are watching the adults in the system closely. They're learning from us what leadership looks like, what disagreement looks like, and whether people with different perspectives can still listen, collaborate, and move forward together with professionalism and purpose. I also want to remind the committee that district staff have consistently made themselves available for conversations, clarification, budget walkthroughs, and deeper review outside of these meetings. The people sitting behind these presentations are not hiding from difficult questions. They're public servants who have spent countless hours trying to navigate extraordinarily difficult decisions with care, with transparency, and professionalism. Some of the most important conversations happen not in the moments of public reaction, but through thoughtful dialogue, preparation, and a genuine willingness to seek understanding before drawing conclusions. None of us are expected to think alike or agree on every decision before us. Strong organizations are not built on uniformity of opinion. They're built on the ability to wrestle honestly with hard realities while still treating one another with dignity and respect. What we model in this room matters. Our students, our staff, and our community deserve to see adults who can engage in difficult conversations without losing sight of shared purpose, shared humanity, and the responsibility we carry together on behalf of children. That's a standard our staff have worked hard to build across this district over the past several years, and is a standard we must continue to uphold. And I wanted to just start with that because I know that there was question after the last meeting about the extent to which we value and welcome debate. And hopefully those who know me know that I value and welcome debate quite a bit. I just want to make sure that in the end, we are role models for our kids. We do so in a respectful way, and that any digging or questions that need to be asked are done with enough time to allow us to prepare answers adequately. So that's all.
So do we have any motions at this time?
The discussion, yeah, so I think we had, and should I have a microphone or something here, but are we good? Yeah, I think
Turned on by you,
It's on.
Parker.
So we'd emailed back and forth about the assistant principals that they would have is, people, coincidentally, my daughter ended up in an issue on the bus today that Jeff Taylor, our assistant principal at the grade school, stepped in on. And then I ended up following back up with him. It's like, hey, we're this conversation we're having, you're not a stranger to it. Like, what is it that you're working on with this and what can we see and what don't we see? And he said, you're going to see referral numbers and things like that, but some of these softer interactions where he just sits a couple kids down and it's like, hey, for something like this that happened on the bus, kid hitting another kid, they could just throw the book at them or they could sit down and work this through, figure out what happened. One kid apologized to the other and they move on. And, there's a lot of this that happens that we don't see. And then on the other side, he also mentioned, and this is something that I didn't know, is that the assistant principals have been leading the way, as he put it, on like the calls and getting the attendance numbers back up. And he was really proud of the numbers at the grade school. They're up to like 77% now. And that the high school's down at like 58%. And then I was looking at this graph after we started getting some of the enrollment numbers and this regular attendees report that it's like crashing off late in high school. So there's a lot of work to get done there, and that directly impacts our budget. And I started trying to grind into, like you said, there's some of it that's enrollment based and some of it that's like the days that they're actually here, and trying to come up with a number of like, how much, I guess if you were going to be crude about it from a sales marketing perspective, how much revenue are they bringing back in? And of course, this is positive outcomes for kids when they're back in school as well. And then there's all of this bullying and harassment. I mean, that's the online chatter. That's what came out in the equity committee. This is the stuff that people are concerned about. And these are the frontline people who are dealing with dozens of these cases like every school year. And we can say, okay, principals are going to take it on. Cool. But they're also managing the entire school on top of handling these discipline cases. And I have concerns that losing two of them are going to have, a outsized impact on the benefit that we're going to get from them. And that's why I'd asked, hey, what is the plan B? What was the last consideration? I guess it would be before we arrived at this mix of people to get cut. And if we were to say, hey, we want to keep the assistant principals here because we feel their role is valuable, and we don't want to lose it, then it's like, okay, then what is the alternative rather than us being unproductive and poke around at a budget we don't fully understand that you guys have put a lot of consideration into? That's why I asked you, like, hey, what would you put forth if we were to come up with a plan A and B? A plan A that we go with what you proposed, and a plan B where we come up with a way to save the two assistant principals or come up with some way to reallocate part-time. I don't know what the mix could be and what would be the downstream impact, because we know we have to make bad decisions and nobody's going to be happy with it. Everybody that works in our district is valuable and we don't want to lose any of them, but it's just full consideration here. And these two in particular, given what they do for the district and the impact it's going to have on parents and students directly, I just think it's worthy of some consideration. What would the alternative be if we were to choose between
Would
them?
you like me to speak to the assistant principal? I mean, I think all the administrators in the room would agree that that was probably one of the harder conversations, and not one that they would have voted on. Ultimately, the assistant principal cut was a decision that came down to cutting more from the top or losing more student-facing programs, and looking at the size of our admin team relative to similar sized districts. I had felt pretty good about staffing our administrative team heavily when I got here, because we had and still have a lot of work to do. And my strategy was to give our administrators the most narrow lanes possible so they could go an inch wide and a mile deep with their programs and leverage as much change as fast as possible. The reality is, unless we lowered our ending fund balance, which is already as low as a lot of people would be comfortable with,
Yep.
in order to save assistant principals as a program in Dayton, we would have to cut staff who are closer to, most likely classroom teachers, licensed staff. If those cuts came from the grade school, you'd be looking at class sizes of over 30. If those cuts came from the junior higher high school, you'd be talking about losing programs that provided opportunities for students.
Mhm.
Historically, we have addressed student behavior and attendance with either deans of students, which are licensed positions, or student management positions, which have been filled by classified staff. I think the as much as people want to hold on to our assistant principal position, speaks so highly of the work that Nicole and Jeff did
Yep.
this year. And like I said, I think the admin in the room would share your desire to hold on to them, and not even admin. We've heard it from licensed union members as well, that having assistant principals takes a load off their plates when it comes to managing behavior. Just it's a really hard call to preserve administrative positions while you're cutting into student programs. So we tried to make cuts that we could justify, that weren't limiting opportunities for students in doing so.
Yeah, and I don't want to downplay the role of other administrators in here, but I feel like this particular group of administrators do more than just like administrate. Like they are student facing and engaging like every day. Not that everybody doesn't have an impact, but they are one-on-one, like with students and parents every day. And I think that's just kind of unique among the other administrators. Again, not that we don't want to lose anybody here, but these two, I just feel like have an outsized impact. That's it.
I have a question. If that's
Okay, yeah.
I think the only outstanding thing for me is to understand a little better the placeholder administrator you have in the budget. So is there a funding resource reason for holding that a placeholder, or what is your biggest reason?
Yeah, so right now, we had riffed both of our assistant principals, and the small high schools grant is a fund that goes to rural high schools under a certain amount of enrollment. And historically in Dayton, that has been given to the high school principal to either use to supplement, like oftentimes it would be CTE, would be an investment they make so that they could, the intent of the grant is to have comparable programs to larger schools, just knowing that you can only do so much in a small school with funding. For the entirety of the time that I've been here, our high school principals have had oversight of that budget and have saved it for a rainy day. So right now, the proposal I had was, if we find that this is a need, after all the staffing shakes out and the dominoes shake out, and it could be assistant principal, it could be a different position that it's used for. Can we use this money for staffing? And so we have it as a placeholder for the highest paid administrative position outside of being a principal, the assistant principal position currently, not knowing exactly what the plan is with it moving forward. But I will tell you that we spent 5 hours probably last week in deliberation about how to address our behavior support and attendance support at both schools, so that it's not only equitable but effective for both buildings. And there's a lot of great ideas thrown around, but we haven't landed on a staffing setup, a structure yet for that. And a lot of it will be dependent on the budget committee and what's passed.
So is that funding source not enough annually to support a position like that?
Correct.
Okay.
The argument would be knowing some of the transitions that will happen with staffing after next year, that this is buying us a year to smooth out those transitions, basically.
Okay.
Hey, Amy, I just wanted to clarify too, the higher level teacher salary is pretty much comparable to a assistant principal. At least it's pretty close, right? Because I know in Salem, Tyson.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I don't know. I don't have the exact number.
15, 20.
It's about 20,000 difference, it sounds like.
Yeah. So that's why it's a good number. So you can do both of those, because again, assistant principal and a higher pay, like a higher experienced teacher, are going to be pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Anything else, Chris?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
One question I have is, so we're talking about, the person who sort of is the, helps with the support of the kids who are struggling, right, with their behavior and that kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be an assistant principal who does that role. So, I guess my question is, and I'm kind of thinking the answer is going to be yes. Have you guys looked at who is best suited to do that if the two assistant principals do go away, like, is there a certain staff member that has the time and ability to potentially step into that role so that there is someone who really is still that person, but they don't do all the other things an assistant?
I mean,
principal
we would definitely need to put someone in that position, regardless if it was licensed, classified, or administrative, whose skill set was suited for that position. One of the things, though, that we're really trying to avoid, and this maybe isn't the best year to try to avoid it, like Dana and I discussed at the last meeting, it is really hard to not think of actual names attached to positions. But when you are trying to set up a district for longevity, we've done a lot of shifting of positions because there are people that we really want to see in them, and that it's kind of watered down roles and responsibilities and kind of tried to make square pegs fit into round holes. And then there's a domino effect on the whole system and everyone else's roles and responsibilities in the structure. So what we're trying to get away from is finding the people and then creating positions that fit the person versus saying, this is the structure that would best fit the programs that we're trying to run and have equitable outcomes for students, and then try to find the people that fit that structure and hire for that, and grow our own within that, recruit for that. And there's just been a lot of clunkiness the last few years by starting with the person and not the structure to begin with. I don't know if that's an answer that makes sense, but
Well, I mean, it does make sense. I guess my thought wasn't so much finding a person who could do that, but just saying, okay, an assistant principal makes X number of dollars a year. And now what we need to find is a person who does that role, but doesn't do all the other things that an assistant principal does.
Right.
Therefore, you don't have to pay quite as much, but you're still getting the quality of that person who could support a kid who struggles.
there will be more work on our principals' plates, no matter how you slice it, unless there's an assistant principal, because assistant principals are able to supervise, they're able to evaluate, they're able to suspend, expel, you know what I mean? There's just a lot of pieces of the puzzle, whereas deans of students or student management.
I'd like to add too, it puts in that impact on the teachers too, because if they don't have, and we don't have a plan for somebody to refer all these problem cases to, then they explode in the classroom, and that distracts from the rest of the curriculum and takes that teacher's focus away from everyone else. So it's going to have another net downstream impact. And so, I mean, I can hear that, okay, we have to lose these two positions and we're going to do something else. But, you know, those were kind of the two specific questions. What is the plan B? Like you said, the class size is specifically what we do. And then, okay, if we proceed with the cuts, then do we know who specifically and how we're going to manage
The
this?
who,
Because we know
no,
it's an issue.
and a lot of the who is, I mean, we're in a RIF situation, and 2 assistant principals have been RIF. So there's a recall process that is, bound by legal parameters. And so a lot of the who specifically, I don't feel as comfortable talking about in a public meeting, because that is, has a lot of personal implications for people and their careers. But there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle that we would need to figure out, regardless of if it's an assistant principal, if it's a dean, or if it's, but that is dependent on the budget that's passed, what we can make work within that.
We're losing a counselor too at the grade school, and that's another one
But
of
we're
those
not losing a
persons we
counselor at
could-
the grade school. I do want to clear that
Okay.
up. We are going from 4 counselors to 3 counselors. There will be a grade school counselor, a junior high
I
counselor. and high
understand,
school.
but that's one of the other people you could have offloaded this behavior problem onto, and we're cutting there. So that
Well,
again begs the question. then where-
Counselors have a very different role than an assistant principal or a
course.
dean, and then technically it's not best practice for a counselor to do anything disciplinary with students.
Right,
It's a
Mhm.
conflict of interest with their
of
other roles.
course.
So, but they do help with behavior in the non-disciplinary.
Right, and I think that's what we got to with the conversation with the assistant principal this week, is there was, we didn't want to make this a discipline case. It was something we were easily able to talk through emotions and have an apology through. And this is something that a counselor could pick up the slack on if we were losing the principal, but we're taking a double knock here. You see what I'm saying in that department. So then it again begs the question, then who would pick up the slack in this department? Are we asking the teachers then, or who's ultimately going to absorb it? And I understand if that has personnel implications, and we can't talk about that, but it also has budgetary implications into like, who are we funding to do this? These people all have other responsibilities. So somewhere this has to even out.
Yeah, and I guess, my answer to that is, every year at this time of year, even when we're not in years of big cuts, there are question marks that are dependent on
Mhm.
forecasting, that are dependent on hiring, that are dependent on changes in kindergarten enrollment, that are dependent on transfers in and out. And so the staffing setup in May is, I don't think has ever been in any district I've been a part of, the exact staffing structure in terms of who's serving in what position or what positions even exist necessarily that you have when school starts that first week of September. So I think what I can commit to publicly and what I have is that we will have support for behavior in both buildings. I do not know what that looks like. There's so many pieces of that puzzle. Like I said, some are legal pieces that have to do with RIF and recall. Some are budgetary, depending on what the budget is that's passed. And then we haven't even gotten all our building admin in the same room to go through their budgets to see how much leaner they are in different areas to make sure that we have all the things on the table when we determine what classification of staffing we will use for student behavior, and then where we'd be pulling that from. Maybe it can be pulled from positions that we still haven't hired in other places. Maybe there's still some changes to be made if that's the case. But there is a little bit of a chicken and an egg issue between budget and RIF situations and staffing. And it's a little bit of a dance in that we can't finalize things fully until the budget's finalized.
And if I may, just as a point of reference, and I'm looking around, Jamie's probably the only one that knows this other than me, but we spent a lot of years with significantly higher enrollment at the junior high and high school, and we only had one principal that did both. And so we've got lower enrollment, and now at least we got two people. So, I'd love to have vice principals too, but just, as a point of reference, we've done it with less.
And
also-
one thing I'd like to add to that too is, as someone who was actually laid off from Dayton in 2009, I appreciate the gradual, because the year that I was laid off, we eliminated 27 certified positions. It might have been like 26, and that was catastrophic. And so when we look at this, I think having the gradual, because here's the hard part when you think about the high school, you're asking about, well, what we do look like at the high school. The hard part about the high school and junior high is you have to worry about teaching endorsements, right? So you can't just look at FTE. You have to look at, okay, we're gonna cut an entire program. And the hard part is then we don't have a lot of options. What programs are you gonna cut that are not gonna have an impact? Because kids don't come to school for English. They come to school for FFA. They come to school for business classes, or they come to school for, these other programs. And unfortunately, those are the ones that are not required to be offered in the school system. So that's where I'd be really cautious too. And as much as I love the vice principals or assistant principals as well, as someone who just lost their position in Salem Kaiser and is being repurposed as well, you have to look at it without looking at the names. And that's a thing that sucks. But we really can't look at the names in this process, because ultimately we got to look at the process and make sure that it's the best thing for kids.
I think what I hear is the budget you've built with this kind of reserve admin position is what we can afford right now. If we find something we need to spend that money on for a person, staff to support our kids, it's there for you to use.
Yeah.
And you're asking us to say, please find the best way to use it.
Yeah.
But this is supportable possibly into the next year as well. And it's a budget we can work from beyond this next school year as well. That's what I'm hearing. And it's very helpful for me to hear that clarity. I want to say thank you for that email, kind of clarifying all those moves. That helped me. I don't know if it helped anybody else. That helped me.
Helped me a lot. Very much so. Yeah.
And I feel a lot more confident moving forward with what we've got. And I can't not say how much I appreciate the work that the staff, they're here and not here,
Yeah.
that you guys have done to help make the really terrible decisions that we're making today. I don't think anybody loves this. I certainly don't. And just is what it is, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And to underscore your point, when I was high school principal and was in charge of staffing of just the high school, I would always keep one FTE if possible in my back pocket because of everything that happens between now and August, because you don't want to find yourself in a bind where your hands are cuffed and you need this thing, but you can't get it because your budget's all the way tapped. So that, it might be, a few more weeks before we know, what the best move is for the money that is available. But I don't want to make that decision unilaterally. And honestly, like, I think Jamie said it best, like, we always are able to, when we get all of us in the same room, deliberating, land on something that we feel like we can lead well and that works for everyone. And this budget process has been a lot of, especially at the building level, admin, their voices have been what we've used to make these hard decisions, but also we haven't gotten to the now, how do we rebuild
Yeah.
what needs to be built part of it? It's just been like, how do we make the budget balanced? And so there's just a lot of work to be done now with, okay, so now what? That we balance the budget. How do we make sure the programs are operating in the way they need to for kids?
Well, the approach that you shared, I think is very supportable. I mean, when you're looking at cutting $2.5 million, finding places for people is really important.
Mhm.
Even if it's something different than what they're currently doing, as sucky as it is, you're trying your best to keep people employed and support our students in the same move. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just, as you move
And it-
people to, some positions are going to be being paid by grants and things. Have we, I don't want to assume, but have you double checked that that's not supplanting, that they
Mhm.
allow
Yeah.
all of them?
Yeah, we have a meeting too with Luke Neff from ODE on Friday, just to go over all the changes of, I think it's this Friday, maybe it's next Friday. All the changes of the grants, because you do have to kind of resubmit your plan and have it reapproved. In a perfect world, you don't want to pack all your grants full of staffing. But in the world we're living in right now, it's the best bridge to get us over this hurdle. I agree with what Jeff Crapper said in the last meeting. It is important to look at these grants as part of Oregon sustained funding, and they're woven together with the state school fund. And so that is why I feel more comfortable filling the grants with staffing than I would if it was like ESSER or something that was specific to COVID, because then you're just kicking the can down the road a little bit. But I just the conversations I'm privy to with superintendent groups in the legislature, there is part of me that's like, this next year, if we can maintain programs for kids, even if staffing feels stretched out, or if we are, having decide to hire an AP as a bridge to get us over the hurdle into the next year, where maybe we will have even one fewer admin than that. I feel okay about doing this for this next year, because then we'll be at the start of a new biennium, and a lot of our voices will be at the table for what the funding looks like. So.
Okay.
Just a couple brief comments, and first I also want to echo, just thank you for making the best of a situation that is a result of broken school funding. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone here. Sadly, our state has chosen to ignore the kids of this state, and I think we see the results there. The good thing is some districts have been dealing with this for 3+ years, so maybe there'll be enough breakage at other places that something finally gets done about this. I appreciate you putting students first and trying to limit the breakage where you can. So I think this is the best we can do with what we got, and you've led us through difficult situations before, and I believe that you've earned that trust for us to move forward with.
Well, I
this.
appreciate that. And honestly, we would be in a much worse situation if the budget committee hadn't done such a great job under or with administrations prior to me. I mean, I inherited a pretty large reserve and ending fund balance, and every year we've been talking about this, that we are going to be tapping into it to maintain and even build programs, knowing that 1.3 is our stopping place of tapping into it, and that at some point enrollment or funding is gonna have to change, or we can't continue that pattern. And this is the year that we say, you know, it's the stopping point, and we either are able to build back up enrollment, or we have to look at, you know, starting to what programs we're gonna have to look at cutting for kids, which I really hope that we don't end up in that position. Because like you said, Craig, in my mind, and I'm sure the principals sitting in this room, there's not too many more programs we could cut while fulfilling graduation requirements and Division 22 standards, because there are things that were required by law that you have to provide to students, and it's pretty bare bones. You know, outside of some of the programs that, like Jeff said, are bringing in students like CTE and athletics, and even then we've cut those so that our teachers are going to have to be doing more fundraising than we want them to have to do to take kids to state and national competitions. And yeah.
Well, we talked about discipline as it gets to the assistant principals, but this campaign to drive up enrollment, like we talk about graduation rates, and it's the seniors in high school that look like they're driving our enrollment numbers off a cliff. It's like 48% or something of kids showing up to school,
Well, and
period,
remember,
in the senior
enrollment and
year.
attendance are two different things.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so we're
yeah.
funded on enrollment, thankfully,
But yeah,
because that could be problematic if not. Other states
Yeah,
sometimes are
but
use attendance formulas. But Robin, I don't know if you want to speak to, you just sat in on a forum about that.
Yes, I was part of a focus group they had. I was in focus group number 13. I imagine there was more, and they put lots of administrators and other people who have a large impact on attendance in their district into these groups. We met for an hour and a half. And the point of the research is they're putting together a legislative report that they'll present to the legislature in September, with survey data. So I took a survey, I put some heavily worded opinions in my survey, so then they chose me for the focus group. And then they'll take that focus group data as well. I've worked with attendance in every district I've been in, so Sheridan, McMinnville, and here. And after COVID, it feels futile. Like everything we're doing, especially at the high school, is like as much as we can possibly be doing, including myself showing up on your doorstep, begging parents, please, please, please send your kid to school. Them saying, what do you want me to do? They play PS5 all night. I can't do anything about it. And so what was
That's hard.
comforting and also really disheartening was every single person on my panel said, until the state steps up and offers schools some more support to get these kids to school, we don't know what else we can do. The elementary principals on the panel, they have been adding and adding and adding to their incentive budget line to basically pay kids to come to school, which just stops working at secondary. So my hope, and what I texted Amy after, is that in some small way, my voice was heard with a perspective of 8 years working in attendance and seeing the very direct line in which attendance became a battle I felt we could no longer win. Because the woman in the focus group that led it, who isn't even an educational researcher, she does research in another field, said this is every group she's interviewed, same thing over and over and over. So I don't want to say that as we're giving up, we're going to keep working really hard to get our kids here, including me showing up at your doorstep.
But for perspective, there used to be teeth in Oregon law,
Yeah.
so you could send law enforcement or
no
site clearance.
truancy law
at-
or something.
Yeah,
like this.
and
Well,
if there was,
COVID, they
not that we
couldn't-
want to, all
Yeah.
would start with that, but after some,
there could be
Yeah.
somewhere you can escalate to.
because of compulsory
So
education.
that's my soapbox. And I will tell you, I've only taken 2 families in my career to truancy, and both kids showed significant improvements in their attendance. One woman said DHS finally got involved after like 20 safety calls, and a 4th grader who's never made it to school more than 2 days in a row for his entire elementary career was there every single day, 2 weeks in a row. So sometimes we have to work together with entities that can do some of the work that we just can't physically do.
But then I just worry that it snowballs if we don't have the people here anymore to go knock on the doors, if we're losing those people. Hey, you know, that there's people that are getting like, hey, I don't want them, if nothing else, I don't want to have this focus on me anymore. get out of here, get off the PS5 and go to school, Jimmy.
Roger, one thing to point out too is that this is not just a Dayton issue. And so, as you know, I'm on the board of directors for Willamette ESD, and they're also doing a regional task force on this very issue too. And so if there is a need, that's something that Amy could easily tap into, is utilize some of the Willamette ESD attendance, because that's one of their high priorities as well.
Yeah, because I was grinding through with the limit of these regular attenders reports. That's what I had to grind through. And it looked like, we were kind of middle of the pack, kind of at the state level, but they ranked all the Willamette County school, or not the Willamette, Yamhill County schools. And it was just Sheridan and Willamina below us, at Newburgh and McMinnville are all having better attendance numbers than us. So it's like, okay, why do we fall at this place in the pack in our locality? And then, we're talking about losing the people we have most directly on point to help fix that.
I have a kind of a different take on it, in that 100% of devastating losses in any type of personnel when it comes to education. But I've worked with a lot of excellent educators who also take this as an opportunity. And when I hear you talk, I hear, like, with them or without them, it's going to pull us one way or the other. And Amy and I were talking, we have 100+ employees in this district. And it's about 7 kids per adult here. And it's also an opportunity to do things differently. We don't have to have 2 assistant principals working their tails off, trying to deal with the parents and the behavior and the attendance, so teachers can teach. That's working in silos. We have an opportunity to come together as a district and change how we do things. And I'm not talking about 80 years ago when Larry was in school. I'm talking about the issues that we have today. The issues we have today takes a team. And Amy's opening speech is right on. But if we keep talking about silos, that we have this to address this, we're gonna have the same problems. Do we need the assistant principals? Yeah, let them lead us, but as a team, where we're all working together, addressing the different issues, rather than just in the silos that we keep doing.
And there, I just wanted to add to that, to the credit of, the teams, they had, knowing that the admin structure wasn't going to be as robust moving forward, they kind of had a plan over time on what they're training first and then what their next tier of training is. And so especially the 612 team in particular, has kind of a gradual release of responsibility for training up all staff, so that the tier 1 behaviors will be minimized, so that the work is less over time. It's just the timing of these cuts is not coinciding with the timing that they had planned to lose an administrator. They were counting on 1 more year to train up staff in the way that they felt they needed to, so that team approach was more effective. So now we're just having to think on our feet a little.
And I appreciate wanting to get out of the silos, but I also hear in some of these school board meetings that, like, the late start Mondays are what we have set aside for meetings and professional development time. And I just don't think you'd find a teacher in this district that would say, sure, I've got extra time to deal with attendance policy issues and calling parents as well. It's going to be like.
The research around attendance does say the most impactful way to influence it is in the classroom with the teacher.
Of course.
But you're right, we're all tapped for time.
Yep.
Can I do a call to vote?
I'm willing to make a motion.
Yep. Do we have a motion to approve the budget?
Well, I move to approve the proposed budget for the 26-27 school year in the sum of $23,091,000.
I'll second.
So we have a first and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And you didn't vote?
I was going up and then it was all opposed, so I just.
Okay.
Would you like to redo the vote so that you can get counted?
Somebody give Ann a cup of coffee.
So that's unanimous.
Yes.
Budget's approved.
And I have another motion, Mr. Chair, for roll.
Absolutely.
I move to approve the taxes be levied for the Dayton School District number 8 as follows. General fund operation for education, $5.0892 per thousand of assessed value, excluded from limitation of $1,889,600 for payment of bonded debt.
I'll second.
How many seconds?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Votes unanimous. No further. Then that concludes this meeting, and this meeting is adjourned at 6:40 PM.
Nicely
Thank
done,
you all for your
Jeremy.
time.